On September 23rd, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Chinese leader Xi Jinping believes subnational level officials are a weak link that can be exploited to advance the regime's interests in the United States. In a speech at the Wisconsin state capitol, Pompeo urged U.S. politicians from state to municipal level to be alert to the Chinese Communist Party's influence and espionage activities. Pompeo said,
"Know that when you're approached by a Chinese diplomat, it is likely not in the spirit of cooperation or friendship."
The secretary said the CCP has for decades deployed friendly language while stealing from our innovators, building military strength, and co-opting our elites. For instance, he offered a translation of Xi's remarks in August to a group of government economists and sociologists in Beijing. "We must actively develop cooperation with all countries, regions, and enterprises willing to cooperate with us, including states, localities, and enterprises in the United States." Pompeo said,
"She knows that the federal government is pushing back against the Chinese Communist Party here in the United States and its malign influence. He thinks local leaders may well be the weak link."
Pompeo added that for Xi, cooperation and opening up means the CCP wants to create arrangements that only benefit the CCP. He warned that the ultimate goal of the regime's malign influence activities is to make Americans receptive to Beijing's form of authoritarianism. The state secretary said the CCP's efforts to sway state and local officials have intensified over the years. He cited the example of a Californian state senator who in 2017 sought to introduce a measure denouncing the regime's persecution of Falun Gong, a spiritual practice suppressed by the CCP since 1999. Pompeo said,
"These people that he was speaking to have suffered as tremendously under the Chinese Communist Party's crackdowns on religious freedom as any others."
According to Pompeo, the Chinese consulate in San Francisco wrote to the Californian legislature saying the senator's resolution might
deeply damage the cooperative relations between the state of California and China, and seriously hurt the feeling of Chinese people in the vast Chinese community inside of California.
He said that as a result, the California State Senate bowed to the CCP pressure campaign and shelved the proposed bill. The secretary also referred to a Chinese official's attempt earlier this year to get Wisconsin Senate President Roger Roth to support a resolution supporting the regime's CCP virus containment efforts. A consul of the Chinese consulate in Chicago, Wu Ting, emailed Roth twice to seek his backing. The attempts backfired, prompting an angry Roth to reject the proposal and instead introduce a resolution condemning the CCP's cover-up of the outbreak. Pompeo said, the reality is that most every state legislature in the country has probably received a letter from the CCP like Senator Roth's as part of a coordinated propaganda campaign. He also raised another example involving Wu, when she forwarded a letter from her husband to the Consul General in Chicago to Wisconsin Congressman Mike Gallagher's district director. Pompeo said that the letter was full of CCP propaganda and disinformation about the pandemic. But what really caught my eye was her declaration. We are firmly opposed to racial discrimination and xenophobia against the local Chinese community and stigmatization of China and the Chinese people over the virus. Pompeo decried this as an attempt by the CCP to drown out American cries for accountability with shouts of racism. The state secretary said, America's righteous anger at the CCP over its handling of the coronavirus has nothing to do with race and everything to do with citizens dead, children kept from school, and jobs lost. Pompeo added that the regime wants to foment the kind of strife we've seen in Minneapolis and Portland and Kenosha, where race-related protests and violent rioting have erupted in the past months.
That's disgusting. We can't let it happen. I'm confident it won't.
President Donald Trump told the United Nations General Assembly that the world must hold China accountable for their actions that led to the global COVID-19 pandemic. On September 22nd, he said in a pre-recorded speech,
"We are once again engaged in a great global struggle. We have waged a fierce battle against the invisible enemy, the China virus, which has claimed countless lives in 188 countries.
The president said that the United States is now pioneering COVID-19 vaccines that have entered the final stage of clinical trials. President Trump characterized the Chinese regime as the nation which unleashed its plague onto the world, noting that in the early stages, when the virus first emerged in China's central city of Wuhan, Beijing chose to lock down cities while allowing flights to leave China and infect the world.
China condemned my travel ban on their country, even as they canceled domestic flights and locked citizens in their homes.
On January 21st, the United States first upgraded its China travel warning after the first virus patient with a travel history to Wuhan was confirmed. On January 30th, it then closed off its borders to travelers from China. The same day, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak a global health emergency. Trump also criticized the UN agency for complicity in the cover-up. The Chinese government and the World Health Organization, which is virtually controlled by China, falsely declared that there is no evidence of human-to-human transmission. Later, they falsely said that people without symptoms would not spread the disease. On January 14th, the WHO, citing Chinese authorities, said there was no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission, but that limited human-to-human transmission was possible, potentially among families. Trump said the United Nations must hold China accountable for their actions. The Chinese regime didn't publicly warn about the risk of transmission until January 20th. In a video speech broadcast later during the assembly, Chinese leader Xi Jinping repeatedly highlighted the need for multilateral cooperation in an apparent response to Trump's criticism. Xi said that countries must adhere to the guidance of science and fully exercise the World Health Organization's leading role and reject attempts at politicization and stigmatization. The U.S. administration has criticized the Chinese regime for its lack of transparency during the pandemic and its human rights abuses, such as in the regions of Xinjiang and Hong Kong, as well as the persecution of the spiritual group Falun Gong. On September 21st, House Republicans released an audit stating that the Chinese Communist Party and the WHO are culpable for the spread of the pandemic. Had they acted sooner, according to the report by Republicans on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, a global outbreak would likely have been prevented. Michael McCaul, the ranking Republican on the committee, said in a statement, "It is crystal clear that had the CCP been transparent, and had the head of the WHO cared more about the global health than appeasing the CCP, lives could have been spared and widespread economic devastation could have been mitigated." Several lawmakers have proposed bills targeting Beijing's role in the pandemic. In July, 6 Republican senators jointly introduced a bill allowing affected Americans to file lawsuits against the Chinese government in U.S. courts. Senator Martha McSally said in a July 20th statement about the legislation, "Americans who have been victimized by the lies and deceit of the Chinese Communist Party deserve the opportunity to hold China accountable and to demand just compensation." In July, the United States, which has been the top government donor to the Geneva-based WHO, announced that it would withdraw from the agency, citing the WHO's failed pandemic response. The withdrawal officially takes effect next year.
On September 21st, federal prosecutors said that a New York City police officer and U.S. Army Reserve member has been arrested on federal charges of acting as an illegal agent for the Chinese regime. According to a criminal complaint by Ma Da-jie An Wang, a 33-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen born in China's Tibet region, fed intelligence about other ethnic Tibetans in New York to the Chinese consulate in the city. Prosecutors said that An Wang works in Queens and lives in Nassau County, Long Island, and he was arrested on September 19th. At his initial court appearance in District Court for the Eastern District of New York, he was ordered held without bail. An Wang's attorney, John F. Carmen, declined to comment to the Epoch Times about the case. An Wang was charged with acting as an agent for China, committing wire fraud, making false statements, and obstructing an official proceeding. He faces up to 55 years imprisonment if convicted of all charges. Prosecutors also alleged that he helped Chinese consulate officials gain access to senior NYPD officials. According to the complaint, An Wang also works as a civil affairs specialist in the Army Reserve, holding the rank of Staff Sergeant, and is stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey. His work involves planning, training, and executing civil military programs, the document said. He holds a secret-level security clearance in connection with this role. The court records show in a phone call to an unnamed Chinese consular official, whom he referred to as boss, in December 2018, An Wang identified himself as an asset for Beijing, saying that even if they deny you in the end for whatever reason, but at least let them know, hey, you have someone in the police department here now. He had regular communications with his handlers in the New York City consulate. He called and texted the boss at least 55 times between June 2018 to March 2020. The boss had invited him to the consulate's National Day reception to celebrate the founding of the Chinese regime under the Communist Party rule. In a phone call on October 30, 2018, the boss complimented An Wang on being promoted within NYPD, to which he replied that he was preparing for a promotional exam for the people back home. The Chinese official replied, "There's a whole bunch of people looking at you." On November 19, 2018, An Wang also informed the boss about upcoming NYPD events to raise our country's soft power, indicating that the intel could help the official advance in ranks within the Chinese government. He told that official, "In the future, after you get a whatever position in Beijing, I will wait for your invitation." William Sweeney, assistant director in charge at the FBI, said in a statement, "This is the definition of an insider threat. As alleged, Mr. An Wang operated on behalf of a foreign government, lied to gain his clearance, and used his position as an NYPD police officer to aid the Chinese government's subversive and illegal attempts to recruit intelligence sources." The prosecutors noted that An Wang had failed to notify the U.S. Attorney General about his activities for the Chinese regime. Agents of foreign governments are required to register with the Justice Department under federal law. NYPD Police Commissioner Dermot Shea said the department's Intelligence and Internal Affairs Bureau worked closely with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division to investigate An Wang. Shea said in an emailed statement, "As alleged in this federal complaint, Bai Ma Da Jie An Wang violated every oath he took in this country, one to the United States, another to the U.S. Army, and a third to this police department." An Wang first traveled to the United States on a cultural exchange visa and eventually obtained asylum, claiming he was arrested and tortured in China due to his Tibetan ethnicity.
On September 18th, Australia's national broadcaster reported that one of the 14 foreign judges on Hong Kong's highest court has resigned due to concerns over a sweeping new national security law imposed by Beijing on the city. The office of the city's leader, Carrie Lam, confirmed the resignation of Australian Judge James Spiegelman, but did not give a reason. Spiegelman, the former Chief Justice of New South Wales, is the first senior judge to resign and publicly cite the law passed by the Chinese regime's rubber-stamped legislature on June 30th without any Hong Kong legislative process or consultation. The Polish-born jurist told the ABC that he had resigned for reasons related to the content of the national security legislation, but did not elaborate further. Spiegelman did not immediately respond to a request from Reuters for comment. Local and international legal circles have been alarmed at Beijing's imposition of the security law, fearing it erodes the former British colony's autonomy and freedoms. Under the security legislation, Lam has the right to select judges for a panel of jurists to handle national security cases. In the most serious cases, suspects can also be taken to mainland China for trial in its courts, which are ultimately controlled by the Communist Party. It also grants extensive powers to personnel from mainland China's security apparatus, who are now based in the city for the first time under the law. Lam's office responded in an email to queries about his departure. Mr. Justice Spiegelman tendered to the chief executive on September 2nd his resignation as a non-permanent judge of the Court of Final Appeal. Therefore, the chief executive revoked his appointment in accordance with the relevant legislation. Last year, Spiegelman had been reappointed to another 3-year term. Foreign judges have long been a symbol of the city's rule of law, helping to replace the role of the Privy Council in London after Britain handed the city back to Chinese rule in 1997. Hong Kong's mini-constitution, known as the Basic Law, enshrines the independence of the judiciary and states that judges may come from other common law jurisdictions. But in recent weeks, Lam and her officials have stressed that the city had no separation of powers and that the powers of its executive, legislature, and judiciary all derived from Beijing. Even before new laws were enacted, senior judges had told Reuters the independence of Hong Kong's judicial system was under assault from the Communist Party leadership in Beijing. On September 18th, Simon Young, a professor at the University of Hong Kong Law School and a barrister, urged the government to name the judges cleared for national security work to stop possible speculation that foreign jurists were not welcome. He said, "The ball is clearly now in the government's court to assure the public it still supports the system of foreign judges on Hong Kong's apex court." Senior barristers said they believed other senior judges were now considering their futures. In July, the president of the UK Supreme Court said it was in discussions with the British government to assess the future of UK judges on Hong Kong's top court. Robert Reed, who also serves on the Hong Kong court, said the new law contains a number of provisions which give rise to concerns.
Beijing's flagship foreign policy initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, has been mired in controversy since its inception, with critics warning that Beijing's infrastructure projects place developing countries under a debt trap by offering unsustainable loans while exploiting their natural resources to drive the Chinese economy. Now, 2 letters from the South Pacific nation of Samoa have revealed how one Chinese construction project, being overseen by the government of Huizhou City in southern China, has been mired with quality problems and work practices that could harm the environment. Sent by a trusted source, the Epoch Times received the letters and a set of internal documents, which were sent from the Huizhou government showing that the Guangdong provincial government ordered the city to build projects in Samoa, which fit into Beijing's political agenda. Huizhou is a municipal-level city in Guangdong province. The project in question is a friendship park in Samoa's capital, Apia. It was first announced in November 2015 as part of a friendship city agreement between Apia and Huizhou, which also included building an arts and cultural center in Apia. However, the documents the Epoch Times received did not mention issues with the latter. Both projects started construction in May 2018. In August 2018, Samoa announced that it would join the BRI. Since then, the 2 projects have become part of BRI. On December 4, 2019, the Huizhou Housing and Construction Bureau sent to the Huizhou Foreign Affairs Bureau sent an internal document that noted the total investment for the Friendship Park amounted to 62 million yuan, $9.06 million. It is unclear what are the terms of the project's financing. The Huizhou and Samoa government did not return requests for comment. The 2 letters were sent by Samoa's Ministry of Works, Transport and Infrastructure. One dated December 20, 2019, was sent to the Foreign Affairs Bureau of the Huizhou City government. The second, dated January 9th, was addressed to the Shanghai Construction Group, with Huizhou City copied on the letter. Shanghai Construction Group is the firm that the Huizhou government contracted to build the Friendship Park. The first letter listed 11 issues related to the park, which is located at the seaside Alil Pho neighborhood and faces the Apia harbor. According to the letter, some were previous problems that the Chinese side agreed to resolve but didn't, while others were newly found. Issues included rainwater stagnation at the car parking lot, a harbor lighthouse in need of repair, the lack of fencing around the lighthouse to prevent tourists from entering, continued excavation around a water pump house, which could cause a collapse, and the use of an aluminum roof instead of local traditional materials to build the fail, a traditional Samoan thatched hut. The Samoa ministry suggested ways to fix those issues, saying, "We hope for Huizhou's favorable consideration to avoid any further delay to the project." The second letter to Shanghai Construction Group criticized the company for not following conditions in the agreement, such as waste materials being scattered around the site. The letter stated that this was a clear breach of a commitment to dispose of waste materials at a local landfill. The letter also stated that improper discharging of sediment from work activities also caused soil to be washed into the lake. The erosion near the embankment caused rocks and mud to break into the lake, which is a breach of the condition that the proposed activity shall not have undue detrimental environmental impact. The ministry asked the company to fix the issues immediately. After Samoa joined BRI, China's ambassador to Samoa, Chao Xiaoliang, published an April 2019 article in a Samoan newspaper to sing praises of the partnership. saying it injects new vitality to China-Samoa cooperation. Beijing authorities set its eyes on fostering close ties with Samoa, a state with voting power at international forums such as the United Nations, and that is situated near vast swaths of resource-rich ocean. In May 2014, the BRI official website published a study about the importance of Samoa's location, with 2 large islands that are located between Hawaii and New Zealand and about 100 miles west of American Samoa. After Samoa signed on, Beijing planned to build at least 2 ports in the country. One is the Asao Wharf on the northwest coast of Savaii Island. The other is Vaiusu Port on the central north coast of Upolu Island. Experts grew concerned that the Chinese regime was seeking to increase its military presence in the Pacific through the Samoa investments. On July 20th, Washington-based think tank Brookings Institution published an analysis about the risks of China's activities in the South Pacific. The article analyzed the first risk, which has a low probability of occurring but would have profound impact, is that China is trying to use its leverage through diplomacy, debt, trade, or elite capture to establish a military base somewhere in the South Pacific. It also warned that South Pacific nations may be willing to align themselves with China in certain United Nations votes.